We are going to go ahead and get started. Just to be respectful of everybody's time. We've done a really good job of getting these and all the information into 1 hour and even fitting in a little bit of additional information. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. We are recording this so we can post it later on social media to share with people. Keep in mind that members of the chamber will get the packet that comes afterwards. So we'll share that with you after this is concluded, but we're looking forward to a great webinar. The first two have been really successful, so I hope you enjoy this one. I'm Julie Blaylock. I'm the president of the Farragut West Knox Chamber, and I thank you for joining us for our recovery roadmap to help businesses get marketing ready as we reopen, which is coming very, very soon. And we're all excited. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. Everyone, keep yourselves on mute if you're a participant. If you're a panelist, keep yourselves on mute unless the question is directed at you. And then please remember to put yourself back on mute as we move to another panelist. So let's get a series of introductions from people. Tell us who you are, tell us your expertise, how long you've been in your industry, and how long you have been serving customers. So let's kick it off with David.
Hello, my name is David Horsewood. I own a Knoxville-based training company called Fire by Light LLC. And I started roughly 25 years ago, give or take. All depends on how you kind of pinpoint the starting time. I cut my teeth doing training as an avocation, and I really wasn't sure how to turn it into a full-time thing. And then I heard about a company that basically contracted with trainers. And I just started traveling the country, doing public seminars and customized on-site training. I hit 49 out of 50 states. I even popped into Canada. I can officially call myself international, I guess. And here in the last couple of years, I've been focusing mostly on Knoxville. I just really wanted to do a lot of my own content. And since I was doing my own thing, I decided to serve my own hometown. And that doesn't mean I never travel now, but I mostly focus on marketing to the Knoxville community. And then I pop out here and there when the timing's right and when the client wants to pay for the airfare and that kind of thing. But my specialty, if you just boil it down to one thing, is helping people better engage, whether that's face-to-face or virtual, whatever the case may be. So I do management training, supervisory training, presentation skills training, impactful storytelling training. I help people create and sustain rapport, that kind of thing. So that's what I do, and that's why I'm here.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, David. And David has hosted some of his own webinars recently on how to engage virtually. Sadly, it has been so crazy at the chamber, I have been able to attend none of them. So I am a willing student as well as facilitator today, listening to what he has to say as always. All right, let's go ahead and introduce Ryan from TDS Telecom. Ryan, take yourself on mute.
Yes, I'm Ryan Distelberg. I am a commercial account manager for TDS Telecom. At this point, I cover all of our East Tennessee markets as well as North Georgia markets. And pretty much I can assist anyone with managed IP, basic phone lines, all the way up to complicated fiber systems. I have been doing customer service now probably a good 22, 23 years. And my history was more of retail management as well as business development. So I've been with TDS now for 9 years altogether between the residential and business side.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, for that. And last but certainly not least, we have a duo, 2-in-1. So we've got the Innovative Management Group, and that is Ricky there on the left and Carla there on the right. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us about who you are and how you guys relate to customers.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Ricky Burris. We started our first company, a parent company, B&H Computers, back in 1994. Basically working out of our house. We started as a little small computer business, and we did that for roughly 6 years. And in 2001, we bought a Radio Shack, and it had one cell phone store in it, US Cellular. And we did that. We've been doing that for the last 20 years, roughly. And then in 2016, we started our third company, TIMG, basically to help small business owners. We ran through a lot of pitfalls and problems, and we've learned a lot over the past 26 years. And so if you ask me what our specialty today would be, I'd say developing leaders. And Carla now is my VP of all my companies. And so I'll let her explain pretty much where she's come from, what she's did.
Yeah, so I'm Carla Hockle, and I have worked with Ricky pretty much since the beginning of B&H. Actually, I started about 2011. Prior to that, I had 10 years of leadership experience with Dish Network. So when I came on to work with US Cellular, I transitioned over to Tennessee to work with B2B. I do a lot of their training and development, and now we have TIMG, so I am the VP of both of those operations now, proudly.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Real quick, I am gonna mute everybody again just to make sure that, there we go. All right, perfect. Okay, here's the way the webinar is going to work. We've got 5 questions that the panelists have been prepped for, that they knew we were going to ask them live. Feel free to drop your business name and who you're with in the chat if you're a participant, so we can get introduced to each other. And as we go through the questions, if you have something that you want addressed or you want to dive a little deeper, go ahead and post that question in the chat. I'll be checking it often. And as long as we stay on task and on time, we'll add those questions as we go. But we're going to have a great discussion, and I know it's going to be really useful for all of you. The topic today is customer service, but specifically customer service in the virtual world. Things have changed the last few weeks. We're all living in a new normal. And it's probably not going away anytime soon. So we brought you 4 experts who have experienced serving customers and serving people in all capacities. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question. I'm going to ask the question of every single panelist, and I'll repeat it as I go. But let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and start off with David. David, what's the number one thing that a business owner or a manager can be doing now to prepare to improve their customer service?
Yeah, that will vary a lot based on what kind of business you are and the kinds of customers you serve. So as I think about it, there's really 4 questions you always have to be concerned with. And the first one is obviously, who are my current customers? Who are my current customers? And whoever they are, their lives have changed dramatically in the last 2 months. It was just last week, I heard my pastor say at the start of his sermon that it had been the 6th worship in a row where it had been virtual instead of face-to-face. And the reality is everybody who attends our church hasn't been to church in almost 2 months now. And everybody who is your customer has a different life today than they had 2 months ago. So I would just say to anyone, regardless of what your business is, ask yourself, okay, I used to have a customer, but their life isn't the same as it was in February. It just isn't the same. How is their life different? And how can I meet the current need, not the need they had in February? Because they may be very different needs. You know, just as an example, I'm a trainer. In February, essentially everything I did was face-to-face. I would do face-to-face one-on-one coaching. I would do live seminars with 12 people in them or 20 people in them. Now, I do almost everything I do virtually, literally virtually. So I'll do webinars like you mentioned I did at the start of this. I'll do one-on-one coaching in the virtual world. And in reality, since we're in the virtual world, training by way of virtual is actually better because that's the world they're going to have to apply the skills they develop when they're in the training. So I just do that, and I encourage everybody watching to do that. Ask who your customers are and ask how their lives are different, April versus February, and meet the needs they have in April. Don't try to meet the needs that they had in February because it's very likely that they are not the same need. It's very likely they're not the same need. Now, that said, I've also realized people I had no chance of serving back in February, I can serve now because everybody's virtual. So as I said a little while ago, I hit 49 out of 50 states and I popped into Canada. Well, I can serve 50 out of 50 states now and Canada and anywhere else in the world because I can do it through a camera. I can do it through a webcam. So my potential for reaching customers I never had the chance of reaching before because I just didn't want to leave Knoxville. Well, now I don't have to reach. I don't have to leave Knoxville and I can still reach them because of this new virtual world. So in some ways, things are better. In some ways, things are worse. But in most ways, things are just different. And what you have to do if you're a business leader trying to deal with your existing customers or trying to reach new customers is just ask them, where are they now? Where are they now? What are their needs now? And what do I have in terms of competence that can help them now?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to start off and something to be thinking about. All right, let's take it over to Ryan. Ryan, what's one thing that business owners or managers can be doing to start to improve their customer service now in this new reality we're living in?
Well, when you think of my aspect of coming from phone service, you want to make sure that you're reachable. Customers don't want to hear, constant ringing, busy dial tones, or even voicemails. So you need to think of first call routing and how to keep a customer engaged to your business until you can pick up and talk to them. So think about, maybe recent experiences. If you have called a business and got a voicemail that said, hey, we're busy, or it says try again later, you want to try to remove some of those things because they can move on to, the next business on their list. So there's multiple ways to change call routing. You can do that through, simple auto attendants that give messages, just explaining what's going on. You can also route to cell phones now very easily. And you can also put in simple call centers that will hold customers with messages explaining, basically we're busy, we'll answer your call as soon as we can. And that keeps them on the line. Think of, at the same time, internet, you're going to want to make sure that you have the speed that your devices will require. So most importantly, talk to your service provider about, the aspect of the phone, and then the aspect of having a good internet that can handle everything that you're going to try to do.
Great points. I think we've all learned exactly how much bandwidth we either do or don't have in the last couple of weeks. And Ryan makes a good point. The Chamber of Commerce has TDS for our phones and our internet. And so when this all started, he was one of the first calls I made. And you picked up the phone, Ryan. Good job. So that was part of my experience. And we've been able to use call forwarding to some success here at the Chamber. Ricky and Carla, now you guys have some different perspectives. What would you recommend that a business owner or a manager be doing now to start improving their customer service as we go forward?
Yeah, Jill, I was going to take a little bit different angle. We deal with upwards of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 customers every single month. And so we have a pretty large staff. And I would imagine that most people on this call, your organization has people that work for you. And so we like to have what we call opinion leaders. Opinion leaders, what does that mean? That's leaders inside your company, whether it be by title or by tenure or just overall opinion of the rest of the staff. Their opinion matters to your staff. And so they watch those opinion leaders inside your organization. And if it's not a good influence, it's going to be bad for your company. So we suggest to everybody, you need to reach out and make sure the opinion leaders you have inside your organization are a positive influence on your company. Because now more than ever, as a leader of your organization, you're going to have to be answering a lot of questions, addressing a lot of fears and concerns that you've never had to address, from your staff to the customer walking in the door, everything down to how often you sanitize your location. And so if your opinion leader has a bad attitude inside your organization and they are putting out bad information, it's going to affect your whole company, your staff, the customers, and everything. So there needs to be a great emphasis right now to make sure you have got some really high character, high quality individuals in those opinion leaders.
And basically, just to feed off of that with what Ricky was saying, I think that business has changed, of course, and so it's really not about the sales will happen on the back end. It's more about hospitality and just caring for your customers and putting out a quality product. And I think now that we have this time, to study and get better, I feel that businesses are able to do that in this time, unprecedented time.
Okay, thanks. Hey guys, for some reason, Ricky, you broke up pretty bad audio-wise. Your video's clear. but
Okay.
Carla's part was a little bit clearer. So speaking of
Okay.
bandwidth, but see what you guys can check on that. That's also a reason why we had you guys do the packet, because we know you have so much information to share. As much as we love technology, we don't trust it entirely. So
We turned our speaker up. Can you hear us better now?
yes, that's
Okay.
much better. Okay, we should be good for the next question. All right. Okay, so the next question, what's one thing that a business owner or managed owner should assess of their pre-pandemic customer service methods to shift or change? I know David started touching on that when we first got started, that you have to figure out where your customer is now because they're in a different place. So what's one thing that an owner should assess of what they were doing before that they should really think about changing now? Let's start with Ryan on this one.
The one thing that I would say that's different now is trying to decide if you need new devices, POS systems, anything that if you're going to do curbside service or remote service, you may need, the newer technology as far as any kind of handheld device or something that will keep things contactless. Those devices will require, involvement with your IT teams or your providers to make sure that you have the right bandwidth to cover all that service, but also internal Wi-Fi systems. If you have guest Wi-Fi, you want to make sure it's something that they can use and it can reach where they're going to be. If you're going to have, wireless devices, make sure the range gets you to where you want to be. So if you're going to take things outside your business, it needs to work outside. So just basically invest in the right equipment that's going to work for you based on your needs.
Great. Yeah, I think equipment is definitely something that we didn't think about before, or at least you were running with what you had because it still worked. And now is the time to think about upgrading to have things go more smoothly as you go forward. Let's come back around to Ricky and Carla, and let's see if we can't get your sound the way we want it to. So what's one thing that you would tell a business owner to think about changing from what they were doing before the pandemic to after?
Okay, first of all, can you hear us good now? Okay.
You can hear.
All right, well, Carla's going to answer this question because this is up her alley.
Basically, it kind of plays off of what I was saying before. I mean, business, how we knew it has changed. So now we have the time to, put out quality products. And the way that we communicate with people, like we've all been saying, it's totally different as well. So business as we know it, and I had the old playbook that everybody used to have, we got to just throw that away and do business a little bit differently. And I think making sure that everybody can be virtual. And then if you're unskilled in that area, get those folks who can help you. And we have a great group, Farragut community, a lot of folks that can help people to get online. But I think that's going to push businesses definitely in the right direction.
Fantastic. All right, and then closing it up on this one with David. What is one thing that owners should assess of their pre-pandemic customer service methods that they need to shift or change?
Well, I know, as you mentioned, that last week I did a few webinars, and the week before that I did a couple of webinars. They were kind of popular, so when I booked another one, decided to invite two guys that I thought might benefit from it. They were both business owners, and I had seen them both face to face, and I knew that they would probably be going virtual. And frankly, they were kind of boring face to face. And if you're boring face to face, you're pretty much brutal on virtual cameras. So I would strongly recommend, just bottom line, I would strongly recommend, if before the virus, when you looked in the mirror, you saw someone that wasn't all that engaging, wasn't all that inspiring, wasn't all that convincing, wasn't all that persuasive, realize customer service is about some combination of those three things. Customer service is about leaving the customer feeling inspired. leaving the customer feeling convinced, leaving the customer feeling persuaded. And of the three, Inspire is the best because it requires the least amount of effort per se. It's just meaning you're the kind of person that people feel like doing business with. And bottom line, if you're in the virtual world, you need to come across in the virtual world as the kind of person that I would want to do business with. That's the essence of customer service. It's having me glad I'm doing business with you, looking forward to doing business with you again. And one of the single best ways to do that is to make sure you can communicate. It's great to have a personality, but you also have to have some skill. You also have to have a heart. And none of that has really changed. But what's changed is if you are uncomfortable face to face, you're probably not coming across well through a camera. And you've got to get to where you are comfortable with both. Because as many have predicted, this coronavirus could swing around again come next fall. So we think we're getting some momentum. We think we're going to loosen the restrictions. We think we're going to get back to how things were, and maybe we will, but round two might be coming. And the reality is everybody who deals with customers needs to develop the skills to be great face-to-face and to be great on camera.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And I know that when the chamber first started doing our webinars, David gave me some helpful feedback about, look at the camera, look at the screen. I've gotten better at it. It's still a new format for us. But yeah, it's definitely things that you don't think about. And it's those unconscious things that you do that are actually what people pick up on, it seems. Okay, going to the next question. How does an owner or manager figure out what customer service practices are working that they can carry forward and what's not? So kind of a self-assessment, I guess. How would you recommend a business handle that, especially now? Let's go back over to Ricky and Carla.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, good. Yeah, I don't like to overthink this one because to me it's relatively simple. If you're making money, it's working. And if you're not making money, it's not working. So that's going to be relative to every company and every business and every person. So everybody needs to establish how much money do you need to make and what pays the bills. And if you're doing that, then what you're doing is working. Can it be improved upon? Absolutely. I think everybody can improve upon everything. But I don't like when people they try to get too technical and trying to make it too complex. If it's working and you're making money, then that's how you know you're successful. And again, it's going to be relative to each individual. Success is relative. So what's successful to me may not be success. I use this example all the time. Success to me, Donald Trump would think I was dirt poor. So I feel like that what's successful to me is not necessarily the case for everybody. So as an individual, as an organization, you need to determine what's successful for you and what's profitable for you and go that route. Don't overthink it.
And just to piggyback off of that too, I think, sorry, business calls. Because we are still an essential business with US Cellular, we've had the benefit of being able to, by trial and error, be able to see what works and what doesn't work. And I do a lot of the development for our training and facilitating for our groups. And so they always ask, like, Carla, what is the best way? And my answer to them is always the way that works. It doesn't really matter how you get there, but if it's working, and like Ricky said, if you're making money, then it's work. So, and it varies, like you said, from business to business.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that simpler is best method is definitely something to take into account. And in the pandemic right now, I don't know about you guys, but we've seen a lot of phases of panic. Business owners worried, anxious, scared. And that's probably never a good place to make a decision or make a change out of. Let's go back over to David. How do you help business owners figure out what parts of their customer service are working and that they should continue with and what's not?
I think there is no substitute for competence. If when I get a product from you or a service from you and it is great, you've got customer service nailed. And at the same time, there are two components. I want competence, but I also want somebody who kind of has 5 qualities that are often referred to as buzzwords, but they cease to be buzzwords as soon as you realize if one of them's missing, you don't want to work with that person anymore. And the 5 buzzwords are to be sincere, transparent, helpful, and then both confident and humble. And just very briefly, again, they all seem like buzzwords, but if I'm not coming across as sincere, that's bad. I mean, it's just bad. Nobody wants to work with insincere people. If I'm coming across as deceptive instead of transparent, that's bad. If I'm coming across as selfish instead of helpful, I'm trying to get my customers to serve me and instead of clearly me wanting to serve them, that's bad. You know, and the last two, they're kind of opposites, but they can both be done simultaneously, confidence and humility. If I'm coming across as confident but lack humility, I'm more likely seen as arrogant or cocky. And as someone a long time ago once said, if I have cockiness, it's a disease that makes everyone except the person has it. So that's obviously not good. And if I have humility without confidence, I'm basically seen as incompetent. You know, why would I trust you? I'm not really sure that you're the best one for me. So I would say be great at what you do. You're 9/10 of the way there. And then at the same time, if any one of those 5, just what I'll call character traits are missing, you're going to have a hard time having people want to do business with you because they'll always be hesitant. They'll always not trust you, and they'll always be open to doing business with someone else.
And David, I'm going to hold you for just another minute. We had a question come through the chat. If you're not good on camera, if you are self-aware and you know you're not great on camera, because let's face it, not all of us are, how do you fix that? The question was, how do you fix your personality? Not as a whole, I guess, but how do you fix your personality on camera? Can you attack that?
I can. Now, here's the good news. Here's the good news. Many new to presenting, whether on camera or face-to-face, are better than those experienced at presenting. Because a lot of those who are experienced at presenting come across as slick, polished, packaged. In other words, it's what I call presentation mode. And even if you're really good at presentation mode, it feels slick, polished, and packaged. If you're new, and everybody can tell you're new, but you're coming across as sincere, transparent, helpful, and maybe not confident, but humble, that's pretty good. And in many cases, that's going to be even better than the one who's been at it forever, but they're coming across as arrogant. So I would tell whoever feels like they're not very good on camera, if you're coming across as sincere, that's the first one on my list for a reason, that's gold. Make sure you're being sincere. Don't pretend to be sincere. Long term, you're always going to get exposed. Make sure you're being sincere. So that's the short term answer. You can do it. You can do it. There's no doubt about it. The long term essential ingredient is you got to work at it. There's just no getting around that. You know, you have 4 things you can work on to get better at anything: knowledge, attitude, skill, and habit. Of the 4, skill is the one that's the least fun to acquire because it's always uncomfortable. It's always a situation where you realize you're not very good. Everybody's heard of those 4 stages of learning. The first stage is unconscious incompetence. The vast majority of the world didn't know if they were good on camera or not before coronavirus. Now we're all getting on camera, and most of us are realizing, man, that's something I need to work on. And, you know, just for a small soft sell here, anybody who needs to work on it, that's my specialty, and I would be happy to work with you on it. But that is essential. It's just an essential skill to develop. And don't think of it as something other than a skill. It is a skill that is rapidly developable if you work with someone who can rapidly develop skill. On the other hand, if you never treat it as a skill, you just treat it as a confidence thing, a year from now, you'll be no better than you are today, still wishing you were better. But if you'll attack it as a skill, just think about it this way. Every single time you've ever tried to get better at anything with dedication and persistence, you always have. Every time in the history of your life. You may not ever have gotten as good as you wanted to be at one or more things, but you've always gotten better. So it isn't a question of, can you get better on camera? It's only a question of, do you really want to? Because if you really want to, you will.
That's very inspiring. It even gives me hope. I like that. That's great. All right. And then coming back around to Ryan from TDS. Ryan, the main question is, how do you help a business owner determine what customer service practices are working that they should keep up with, and then what's not?
Kind of jump on what Ricky said, but basically, obviously if you are making money, then you're doing something right. But I would take it even another simple step too, ask for feedback. A lot of people assume, that you're doing it right, but you don't know until you get that feedback, and do it without annoying surveys, because surveys are annoying. But just a simple phone call, follow-up phone call will tell you a lot about what you did right and what you did wrong. So I would just say, yeah, the feedback is what I would go for.
Awesome. And you've just given me pause for that survey I was going to send out later. So thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Coming around to question number 4. What's the best way to determine timeline and how to schedule improvements to your customer service? Especially, if you have a decent number of employees. We have a lot of small businesses in the chamber. Some are single owner employee. Some have 2, 3, or 4 employees. Others have as many as 50 or 100. So if you need to make improvements to your customer service, or you want to make changes, how do you figure out the timeline in which to roll them out? Ricky and Carla, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, we'll start with that. It's pretty simple for me. Julie, what we do is, business has changed. So when I first started back in '94, you could do budget work for 5 years in advance. And I guess really at that point, set it up on yearly adjustments. That mode of business is gone. You have to do budget work now, like at 3-month intervals, and adjust it every week. And so what I do every little bit is I sit down and figure out a worst case scenario budget. And then every 2 days I go back and do what I call real time adjustments to that, course correct. And the reason I do a worst case scenario budget is because I want to figure out, well, if the worst case scenario happens here, such as COVID-19, will we be able to sustain our business? And then I adjust that every 2 to 3 days. I do a second budget, and I do that based on what I feel like is what I would like to see happen. If everything falls in line with all of our overhead and everything else, this is where we'll hit. And what I typically find is that we get into that 75% range of that budget. But I have 2 budgets I look at all the time, at all times, and then I make adjustments at least every 2 days. I check my budget every 2 days for all of our companies. And when something like COVID-19 happens, then we're pretty well set up to be able to maintain and sustain if we go through a rough patch. And we call it peaks and valleys. Every peak is followed typically by a valley, and every valley is followed by a peak. And you're going to determine how long you stay in that valley, how well you maintained your peak, and how you managed your peak. And I think a lot of people get to think, well, I'm always going to be on this peak. And no, you're not. Something's going to knock you off your peak. And sometimes you don't even see it coming. Nobody saw this coming. It was nobody's fault. And so what you're seeing now is the people that managed their peak effectively, they've been able to manage this valley effectively also. And so I use our business model. We're still debt free, and we've been able to manage it effectively and with minimal effect on our companies. So we're very proud of that fact. But I do, like I say, I set up a lot of budgets, and 2 budgets, one worst case scenario, and then the other one I set up based on what I want to see happen, and we course correct it every 2 days.
And Ricky, I want to stick with you for just a minute. That question that came up in the chat, I think is a good one, and it's a realistic one, because you guys deal with employees, and I know when we've talked in the past, you have surprisingly low turnover in your companies, which is great. So if you have an employee or someone under you who knows they don't present well, they're self-aware, they're a good person, they're a good employee, but they know they don't do well on camera or in person, how do you counsel them through that? What tips do you give them?
Well, the first step I do is I get Carla's advice because she's very good at training and development, and that's why we have her own staff. So I have a opinion leader in Carla who is very good at her job. So she can actually, people will email her and ask for tips, and within like 24 hours, she gets them a response. But the second thing is we try to coach everybody we have. And then there will come a point if we realize that person just cannot do the job, Julie, what we do is we have to find them a different seat on the bus. Sometimes people are sitting on the wrong seat on the bus. Not everybody can drive the bus, and so there has to be passengers also. And so we try to make sure that we have everybody put on the right seat on the bus, and maybe not everybody needs to be on the camera. That's just a fact. And so I think a lot of times we try to force the issue and try to put people in positions they're not capable of handling. And so like I say, we coach and we care about our people. They understand that. And so we sit down and have an honest discussion with them. And, life's pretty simple. You do three things. You take care of the basics, you tell the truth, and you own your mistakes. And if you do those three things, it's very difficult to fail. And we've proved that throughout the years with our companies.
And we can also, with those personal individual interactions with those people, we can find out where their lid lies. So each person has a lid wherever they're at. So we can see, hey, is this just their wheelhouse in here? And that's where they're going to excel and do the best and be the most profitable, for the business and, the best for our customers out there. So it's, I gave the example the other day to a fellow that works with us as a Rubik's Cube almost, it's just, it's moving parts, and he's very good at that type of thing. And I said, hey, you're excellent. He can put it together in a few minutes. And I said, hey, think of the business as moving parts, and you need to put people, where they fit in the right seat of the bus.
And Julie, I want to say one other thing that piggybacks off what David said. It's the skill issue. It's a will issue, skill versus will. And we can train people to do certain things, but if they do not have the will to do it, it's a lost cause anyways. So we determine first, is it skill or will? If it's skill, we're very patient. We work with them, we train them. If it's a will issue, we do not have a lot of patience with will issues. So we quickly remove those individuals.
I think I tend to agree with you there on that. The will issue is a big one for me. All right. And then taking it back around to Ryan, the question is, what's the best way to determine a timeline for implementing new or improved or different customer service measures? So how do you structure that as a small business, as a bigger business? What can you provide?
Well, you definitely have to plan ahead and talk to your provider so you know all of your options. You really want services that are flexible. For comparison, if you take a service for voice that has two ways to go, one being a web portal where you can go in and immediately make changes versus calling your provider and waiting 3 to 5 days for that change to make, that's probably going to be a service where you definitely want to lean more towards this web portal based voice service now. Something like that, or something with short-term commitments. You don't want to put yourself into long commitments or stuck with something that you're going to have to keep 3 to 5 years. So flexibility, web portal type based services, and then short-term commitments that you can alter quickly.
Great. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right. Last question, and then we'll probably wrap up with some final thoughts, although I might throw in a curveball for you guys, so be ready. The last question is, what does success look like? So when you're talking about customer service and the experience that your end user, your client, your customer is having, what does success look like to each of you? How do you define it? Ricky and Carla, why don't you start?
Yeah, Julie, with us, it comes down really, it's pretty simple. Again, referrals. If we're getting a lot of referrals, we know, and we base that off of all of our associates that are working inside of our organization. if we're going on a referral business, we know that we're being that individual's being successful. And then word of mouth. I travel throughout everywhere where we have locations, and I'll talk to a lot of people, and I get a lot of feedback off of those, even other company owners. And what's the word about our company out on the street? And I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of honest, candid feedback from those individuals. But basically, we just go with referrals. If you're getting a lot of referral business, either solicited or unsolicited, one of the greatest compliments that we can receive, or one of the is from our customers. US Sir does have a thing where it's called customer feedback forum, and we will get those emails in frequently, telling us that a particular associate in one of our locations has had outstanding customer service, and they want to commend them on what they did. You know, we have all the time our customers telling us that somebody delivered a product to their house, or that they came out to their car because they were scared to come into the location. So we had people going out to their car. We went and hooked up internet at people's houses and home phones and things like that. So referral business is the quickest indicator that you're doing something right. So that's what we kind of base it on.
And we also say, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I think now is the time to really put out that message to our customers that, hey, it's not about business. It's not about the sales. It's, hey, I'm genuinely trying to help you. And there's so many talented people, especially with the technology out there. People out there need the help, you know, they need those suggestions. So that's pretty much our approach now, not so much as a sales, just making sure our customers have ease of access to things and just doing business differently in a way of, hey, how can I help you versus, you know, and how can I serve you versus, you know, trying to get business from folks. And I think they respond well to that, and the sale will, you know, with the referral, that happens on the back end.
Yeah, that's great. I think definitely a helping and a servant attitude is appreciated right now. All right, let's take it over to Ryan. Success. What does success look like with customer service with you? How do you know you've been doing it right? How do you define it?
I know a lot of people, customer-wise, they know if you're putting the customer service first or if you're putting the sales first. And, you know, at this point, you know, taking what they just said into account, I mean, it's all about your customer service and the servitude and what you're doing, and then the sales will come off of that. So whichever one you're putting first is the result you're going to end up with. And then I would say at this point, you know, with everyone stressed and worried, it just needs to be easy. I mean, it can't be complicated. It can't be, you know, difficult. The easier it is, the more repeat business you'll have.
Absolutely. All right. And then certainly not least but last on this question, David, success. It's what you talk about a lot of the time. How do you define success with customer service? How do you know you're doing it right?
Well, for me, it's a little different because I'm a trainer and I do coaching sessions, I do training sessions. My most visible evidence of success is when I'm training someone and they're getting better during the course of the training. It's just real-time feedback. Often on the way to getting real-time feedback that shows they're getting better, I'll often almost irritate or anger them from time to time, because that's how skill development works. That's how getting more confident works. That's how challenging someone to be brave works. Initially, it kind of makes you angry because you'd rather just be safe. So I tell people always, early on in a coaching session, early on in a training session, that my main job is to have people leave a session or leave a training able to do stuff that they couldn't do when the session began. If that happens, I served my customer well. If that happens, I served my customer well. And if that doesn't happen, I didn't serve my customer well. So as I say, my business is a little bit different. I can get real-time feedback, but I would certainly agree with the other points made that if you get word of mouth, it's obviously a good thing. If your reputation on the street is good, it's obviously a good thing. If you read comments on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, you know, people praising you, you know, that's obviously a good thing. But here's just the reality of it. If you're in business for a long time, it's only going to be because you're actually helping people or because they have to work with you. And let's face it, there are some industries where you don't really have a lot of options and people have to work with somebody and everybody's kind of average. But for the reality of most of our membership, the Farragut West Knoxville membership, we're not people that people have to do business with. We're people that people do business with because they want to. And they're going to want to do business with you if you're making their lives better. And they're not going to want to do business with you if you're not. So I would just pull some of the comments I made from earlier. Just make sure that you are running your business and interacting with your customers sincerely, transparently, helpfully, confidently, and humbly, and make sure you're great at what you do. And if you do that, your customer service is fantastic.
Excellent. All right. We do have a little bit of time left. And I haven't seen any new questions pop up in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and throw just a small curveball at you guys. This was not in your packet, but it's very relevant to what we've been talking about and what's going on out there. Most of you know, or all of you know, that Knox County is getting ready to reopen as of Friday. We're excited, and businesses all have different directives and plans in place, or they're still trying to figure them out. The temperature of the community out there seems to vary pretty widely. You have people that can't wait for us to get reopened. You also have those that would like us to stay closed a little longer because there's anxiety about the contagion and everything. So surely businesses are going to be getting lots of different feedback potentially. How would you advise businesses to respond to feedback, especially when it's very disparate, as it might be right now? Ryan, can you touch that question a little bit?
Oh, me first, great. I mean, just be honest. That's all I could say. If you're open and you're doing things your way you're supposed to, and you're keeping it honest and communicating to them, bringing up, good answers to their concerns, then I think they'll be comfortable. But it's all about the honesty and just keeping it pretty simple as to what's going on. And, I don't know if there's a perfect answer, but I would say honesty goes a long way.
Absolutely. David, back around to you. How would you advise businesses to deal with that should they experience it?
Well, I actually gave this some thought just a couple of days ago on an unrelated subject. And it just occurred to me that if you just boil it down into generalities, stereotypes, and you read LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff, it seems, at least of those who are putting out an opinion, everybody who thinks we ought to stay shut down is fearful, and everybody who thinks we ought to open up is stupid. So everybody's something negative. Everybody's either fearful or stupid. And the reality is, I don't think everybody is fearful or stupid. I think there's a lot of smart people who would rather stay at home. And I think there's a lot of smart people who think we ought to open up. And I think there are some fearful people in both camps. And I think there's some brave and confident people in both camps. Here's what I know for sure. Fear is not a new thing. The coronavirus is a new thing, but fear is not a new thing. And whenever there's fear, there's only three things that get us to take action in the face of fear. Okay. What might those three things be? Well, one is foolishness, and you certainly don't want to be foolish. So foolish, not good. And I don't think anybody's recommending foolishness. Nobody. I'm not aware of anybody recommending foolishness. Now, when we're judging someone else's behavior, we'll call it foolish. But I don't think anybody in their own head is recommending foolishness. So what are the things that we ought to use as our guiding principles for making decisions? I think one of them is courage. Do the courageous thing. And another one is do the right thing. And if you're going to do the courageous thing and the right thing in your own heart, and somebody criticizes you for that, well, now you just have to have something called a backbone. But not a mean backbone, not an in-your-face backbone, a joyous backbone. Truly a joyous backbone. You should have some joy in you that allows you to stand up for what you think is the right thing to do and the courageous thing to do, whichever one it is, whichever one it is. You ought to be able to assert what you think is courageous and right with a joyful heart that doesn't condemn other people. You can say it with love in your heart and a smile on your face, and you can acknowledge we may not agree on this, this is my decision and this is how I am moving forward. And I want to do the best I can to serve you. But bottom line, I would be courageous. I would try to make sure to the best of your ability to discern that you've made the right decision. And then don't be angry when someone disagrees. Just acknowledge they have a right to disagree, but also acknowledge your own right to being courageous and doing what you think is the right thing.
It's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, Ricky and Carla, same curveball question. How would you advise business owners to deal with some of the potentially disparate feedback they might get amidst everything right now?
Julie, I believe if you, we run a little bit different model. So I think most businesses they put profit first, and then they put the customer second. And I think third, they place their associates and their staff last. And we try to do the exact opposite. We put our staff first. We show them we care about them. We treat them that way. We treat them great. We take care of them. We put their needs first, and then we worry about the customer second. And we feel like after that, number three, the profit will come. I think if you treat your staff that way, that message will get out. And that when the customer comes in, and there will be concerns, there will be questions, there will be fears. But if you treat your staff that way, and they have that kind of comfort that when the customer comes in, they'll take care of the customer. Will there be more fear and questions? Sure there will be, but your staff will be able to take care of it. And to the second point of that, I'm going to parlay off what I first said when I was breaking up on the opinion leaders. You have to have good opinion leaders in your organization, because you cannot possibly be inside of every single spot you've got. And if you have a poor opinion leader, somebody that does not have the best interest at heart, that's who everybody's looking to influence your company. And like I said earlier, their opinion matters to the rest of the staff, and that's why I call them opinion leaders. So you must make sure you've got great opinion leaders inside your organization. And if you do that and you treat your staff the proper way, they'll take care of the customer. The profit will come after that. And that's the model we have used for the past 24 years, and it works great. And I'll go back to what Ryan and David both said: honesty and just telling people the truth and being courageous. You cannot go wrong if you do those three things.
Absolutely. And Steve, I saw your question in the chat about our courage level and when the gala will be. We were talking about it just this morning with our board. We're trying to pick a date and figure it out. So stay tuned, but I'll set your tickets aside right now. How about that? All right. Final comments. Anything we didn't cover from the panel that you would like to throw in before we conclude another great webinar? Who wants to go first? I'll let you guys choose. Raise your hand. Okay, David.
I just want to say thank you. I did not get to catch the first two virtual meetings in this series. I was invited to do this one, and I've had a good time, and I've heard some very nice insights, and I just think this is a great thing that the Chamber of Commerce is doing. It isn't the first great thing you've done. It's just the most recent great thing you've done. And I don't say that to flatter you. I say that because I think we have a well-run chamber who seeks to serve its membership, and I'm glad to be one of the members.
Thank you. That's very, very kind. Ryan or Ricky and Carla, any last thoughts you want to share?
We'll go. Thanks, Julie, for letting us be on, letting us be able to talk to the community. We've been very fortunate. We've been able to keep our stores open during this time because we were deemed essential business. So real time, we've been in this real time. We've had to handle everything from having COVID in our stores to the customer fears and concerns and how the staff reacted and their concerns. So we've been able to, instead of being able to have a 35,000 foot view, we've been right on the ground floor of it. And so we've navigated our way through it. We've continued to be debt free throughout this, and we feel like that it's really set us up for success in the future because we can reach out to people now and we can help other business owners. And I'm going to say it again. I feel like that God has put me as a steward over these three companies. I take that serious, and I feel like it is my job to help other small business owners who may be struggling and who need help. I was the guy that was sitting in my office at 12 o'clock at midnight, had no idea how I was going to pay my leases, my bills, my payroll. I was $1.5 million in debt, and he helped me get through that. And now we're debt free and we own 3 companies. And I believe with all my heart, I can help other small businesses. And Carl is a great asset to this team. And that's what we want to do. We want to help other small businesses be able to get out of where they're at and get out of debt and be more successful, and the stress relief that comes from being out of debt. And so there's something like COVID-19 hits, when you don't owe anybody any money, that's a big relief. And so that's where we sit today. And the Lord has blessed us abundantly, and I cannot stress that enough. So we're here to help, and I just ask people to reach out to us because we want to help.
We appreciate that. And it's definitely good to see you guys. It had been a minute since we got to see your faces. So I'm glad we could wrangle you in for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Go out your playbook, everybody.
It's gone. I burned it.
Yeah.
I burned it weeks ago. All right. Ryan, any final thought you want to share?
I just wanted to say thank you, Julie, and the Chamber for the opportunity. These webinars have been really good. And then, of course, all the attendees that can make it. I just think it's a great experience and something we should continue with.
Well, I think that with you being on the board of directors, you have a tiny say in that now. So congratulations.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. It has been our honor to have you as panelists sharing your knowledge and your information. Again, this has been recorded, so we will be posting and uploading the video here in the next couple of days so you can watch it or listen at your leisure anytime you want. Members of the Chamber will get the packet. It does have all the attendees' contact info in it, so you can get a hold of them directly if you have any follow-up questions. And then it has some other great information in there for you. But on behalf of the Chamber, I thank you. And stay tuned for part 4, which will be next Tuesday, same time at 12:30. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and enjoy the rest of this week. Take care.